Okay, and welcome, Georgina. This is Georgina. She's a naturopath and a holistic sleep consultant. And if you saw Georgina in the earlier module talking about pregnancy sleep, today we're going to be talking about newborn sleep. And Georgina has a holistic approach, which I love, being a holistic nutritionist. So I'm going to hand over to Georgina, and she's going to run us through a little bit about her background and also about her tips for getting newborns to sleep well. So go for it, Georgina.
My name's Georgina Windebank. I'm from the Holistic Sleep Project. I am a qualified naturopath and was doing that for quite a while, and then had a role in sales. And then I've always been a terrible sleeper. Well, actually, I haven't always, probably the last 7 years, but I've always been a light sleeper. I'd have trouble getting to sleep, staying asleep. It definitely depends on what's happening in my life, but overall, just not a great sleeper. And then when I was pregnant with my little one, my mother passed away. So that was really the point that I thought, I really need to have this child be able to sleep, and for me, sleep independently, because that was the only way I was going to get a break, and that was kind of the only way that I was going to catch up on the sleep that I may have missed during the night. So I went ahead and looked for a holistic course, and I found one in the US and studied that for a year. So the approach is different to, I guess, a normal sleep consultant, in the fact that I look at many different areas, emotional well-being of the child and the mother and the family as well, and how they're coping, and what kind of labour the mother might have had. Those kind of elements all contribute. And then I look at the nutrition of the baby and the mama. I also look at the developmental milestones and the physical development of the child. And I also look at the sleep environment, which is crucial. And included in that is routines. So I look at a whole host of things that contribute to sleep, of both when I do pregnancy sleep, newborn sleep, and toddler sleep. I'm kind of passionate about it because not only am I a poor sleeper, but I like to put the puzzle together. So it's a little bit like being a naturopath or a nutritionist, where there's lots of parts that fit together to make the solution. I really like looking at early waking, early rising. That's one of my favourite things to look at. And also dropping naps. So when babies are dropping from 3 to 2 or 2 to 1, or in fact to no naps. So there's some of my kind of passion areas. We'll have different areas, and the sleep environment is really important to me as well. So that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, awesome. And I think it's such a good approach. And talking about things like birth experience for mums, like we know how much that impacts all of the outcomes, in that newborn stage, in what we call the fourth trimester now, like that. It's such a new phase for mums and babies, and they're, like it's a real transition stage for them. And then so many things are contributing to how that happens. And like in Australia, 1 in 3 mums have a traumatic birth experience. So that if there has been that, and if you're a sleep consultant coming in and you don't know that, then that's so important to find out the mum's story and all of those background that might be contributing to the sleeping problems.
And expectation in a birth is huge, because if you were expecting to have a birth a certain way and it hasn't turned out that way, mothers really carry that, and then a lot of times that can be one of the triggers for postnatal anxiety or depression. That can obviously often be the trigger, and then how they relate to that baby, and then how they're willing to, or how they can help that baby to sleep, or in fact maybe they don't want to, or they're not having that bonding. There's all sorts of things. I could talk for hours and hours about that component, but that birth and the way it went according, and how that measures up to your expectations, is one of the key factors when I look at birth experience.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, would you be able to run us through a couple of your tips about newborn baby sleep?
Yeah, so the key thing that I find with newborn baby sleep, and my key tip, is around environment. So we really want to set up the environment so it's like it's replicating the womb. So we want to make sure it's dark, for one. Now, this really looks when the light comes up, and obviously at the moment, but it depends on the time of year and where you are in Australia or in the world, what time it starts to get dark. So we need to make sure that the room is blacked out, and there's no light coming through. Particularly younger babies are sensitive to that. So that can happen. We get a lot of early rising for many factors, but one of the factors can be light, sort of 5 to 6 a.m. We want to make sure that the baby is swaddled, because again, we're trying to replicate the womb. If we can swaddle as long as we can until that baby starts rolling. Now, a lot of people say, oh no, you know, my baby's fighting out of it. Now, you can get some incredible products online, and I can recommend if people want to come to me and ask, but there's incredible products that can really are better than just a cotton or a muslin, you know, better than a swaddle, but really kind of tying those babies, not tie, but looking those babies really firmly, because we're trying to create that cozy feeling. White noise, I cannot rave about white noise enough. It has a dual purpose. So in the womb, it's noisy. There's all sorts of noise in there. So we're creating the noise of, recreating the noise of the womb. So it's noise. If you were to put a baby in a silent, quiet room, a newborn, into a room and expect them to sleep, that's going to be really foreign to them.
Yeah,
so white noise is incredible for creating that womb-like environment, but it's also incredible because newborns particularly are so sensitive to noise and environment. We need to block out all that other noise. So, you know, garbage trucks coming in the morning, that can often wake up a newborn. Birds tweeting in the morning. Often there's other people in the house, perhaps the father's going off to work early, or the mother, depending. That can happen where the father's getting up and going to work early, and that can wake the baby. Or you've got a toddler and they're waking, or whatever the scenario is. We want to block out that noise. And so white noise, I just can't rave about enough. You don't want to do it from your phone. Like you were asking me earlier about EMR. You don't want to do it from your phone. You can buy machines and keep them as far away from the baby as possible, that you plug into the wall, and then you can choose which, and have it as loud as you need to have it. So white noise is incredible.
Awesome.
Warmth, as we were talking about before as well, warmth. So looking at the room being between 18 and 21 degrees and dressing the baby appropriately. Now, this is a sort of case by case, and you really need to be safe about the guidelines that we follow. But I choose to always recommend my clients dressing cotton, because we want them to be breathable materials.
Yeah.
But we also need to make sure they're warm enough, because babies that are cold will have trouble getting to sleep. They will wake early. Again, between that kind of 4:30, 5:30 mark, and they won't be able to get back to sleep. So if they've had a feed or whatever, and the newborn can't get back to sleep, that can often be a cold factor.
How would a mum know if their baby was warm enough? Like, is that making sure the room's the right temperature, and the certain amount of layers? Like, because that's, you know, I guess that's another unknown for mums, you know, like there's so many unknowns when you've got a newborn. So how would you know?
I can't give you, because it's just dependent on if the baby's swaddled or not, and it's dependent on the age. So I would really need to give a one-on-one kind of guide with that.
So that would be somewhere that a mum would be able to contact you about, and you would
definitely,
that's some of the things you do.
But if your baby consistently woke at between 4:30 and 5:30, that would be my first indicator that the baby's likely cold. Or if they're waking frequently. So if they're, say, past that really newborn phase where they're waking too early for feeds, but they're still waking every 2 hours, but they're not hungry, they can be cold. If they're having trouble getting to sleep after a feed, as I say, and they're just not getting to sleep, it could be because they're cold. So this waking early and this trouble getting back to sleep, those kind of factors, because it's obviously cold. I always get people to set heaters in preparation for that temperature drop, which is usually between 3 and 5 a.m. I'm quite into temperature, so I Google the weather, and I often recommend my clients Google the weather to see when the temperature drop's going to be that night, and then you can prepare. And I recommend certain heaters that allow you to set that temp.
So this wouldn't be something that mums would need to do. You know, every mum would have to start, you know, we don't want to give mums another thing they have to do. This is something that they would do if their baby was waking and not sleeping well. It's not like, you know, we want to be aware of temperature and stuff like that, but it would be something to look out for if the baby's waking.
But I would also invest in some really good things from the beginning. So I'd be investing in there's something, I'd be investing in some good wraps. I'd be investing in some long sleeve singlets that are cotton, because I always recommend long sleeve singlet under your onesie. I try and do as much cotton in that onesie as possible. So Pure Baby are great. Obviously that's quite an expensive brand to have a couple of those, but otherwise Bonds is really good because I think it's 5% elastane. So there's still quite a bit of cotton in that. and then you
And that's
wrap.
great, and
Then
they're available everywhere. And I guess too, the
exactly,
other thing is a lot of the mum, this program will be going to mums nationally, so it will be depending on their climate and where they live and
exactly,
their season. Absolutely, wouldn't it? So it would be
yeah.
just being aware of the temperature of the room, and that would be
And
something.
that's the other thing. If you live in a state, like in Brisbane, and you don't have to use cooling or heating. If your room is at 23 degrees always, which is that's not what I said. So I said between 18 and 21. But if it's 23, then we can adapt the clothing to suit that.
Yeah, awesome.
So that's where it's really hard to give a hard and fast rule on temperature and clothing, because there are guidelines that I have that I follow on a one-on-one basis, but it's kind of hard to give a broad.
Oh, absolutely, because there'd be
Yeah.
lots of variables to what be driving.
Yeah, and that's the whole point, isn't it? It's an individual approach, just like yours is. We're individual people, and that's the same with the emotional well-being side of things. It's an individual birth experience. It's an individual family setup. You might be a single mother. You might be you might have grandparents living with you. All these things are the factors that I look at in a home and in a sleep. Sleep is not just the baby's issue, it's a family issue. Absolutely. So everything that I look at is individual.
Yeah, amazing. So temperature, what was the next?
Oh yes, so then cotton I've said. Now baby wearing. So baby wearing is another component, I guess, of the environment. Now I recommend that really for those later naps in the day. So trying to get that third nap or a fourth nap can be really difficult as you're heading into witching hour.
Yes.
So that's a really great time.
I remember witching hour. Yeah. Yeah.
My child only did, as great a sleeper as he is, he only did a cot nap twice, I think, in 6 months for the third nap. So I was always walking with him in the pram or had him in the carrier. So and as long as the baby wearing stuff is SIDS approved, that's really important. Mm-hmm. So I recommend that as probably the last component for the environmental stuff, and doing that to the later naps in the day when they're difficult to get. Yeah. Now, another thing to look at is catnapping. Yeah. So I get contacted all the time about catnapping now. Unfortunately for all of us, it's developmentally normal because they haven't learned to link this, like they haven't learned to link their circadian rhythms haven't kicked in, and they haven't learned to link their sleep cycles. So catnapping from 20 to 40 minutes, unfortunately, is normal. However, it's really important to keep appropriate awake times for their age. So often I see babies that are kept up way too long. Perhaps the mum is just learning and they have missed those tired signs, or they're off doing something and they think, oh, the baby can sleep later. You've really got to be committed to awake times, because what happens is the baby misses a nap, they get overtired, and then that carries into your night, and then you have a terrible night. So we look at 24 hours when it comes to sleep. So we want to have really great days so that they can carry into the night and we can have the best possible scenario. So from birth to 1 month, the awake time of that child is 40 to 60 minutes. Mm-hmm. For a 1 to 2 month old, it's 60 minutes. For a 2 to 3 month old, it's 1 hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah, wow. So they're not awake for long time.
It's a really great place to start. I don't do anything.
Sorry, I was just going to say that they're not really awake for a long period of time at all in that sort of newborn, that fourth trimester stage. They're not ready.
And we don't want to do a hard and fast routine. I never do a hard and fast routine until sort of, not even then, it's still not hard and fast, but 3 to 4 months is when we can start to put a bit more of a routine. But there are really great foundational things that we can put into place so that those steps are there, but also so you can do things like prevent overtired. Ensuring that they're getting enough sleep total in the day is really important, because developmentally they need it. They're so overstimulated by their environments as newborns. We need to ensure that they get enough sleep. So just sticking to that, kind of casually, but being aware of it and not holding them out for 2 and 3 and 4 hours is really, really helpful.
Yeah. Awesome.
I've got 3 more for newborns.
Go for it. I love
it's
them.
a big area, newborns.
Yeah.
So emotional. Yeah. They're tricky little things. So emotions. So emotional well-being. And I mean, obviously the best thing we can do is cuddle them and, really have that skin time. Breastfeeding, if you can, is a really amazing thing that we can do. Also, those cuddles with dad is really important to have both of them. We do it in the hospital, but we can also carry it on when we get home.
Yeah. Do you find skin to skin cuddling's really good as well? That's one of my big recommendations for a lot of issues, like, for the bonding and the sleep and the settling and the breastfeeding outcomes and those kind of things as well, is that skin to skin, and like you say, with dad as well.
Absolutely, as long as they're warm.
Yeah.
So obviously if you're doing that and, you know, they have got your body warmth, but if it's particularly cold, always, you know, putting some sort of
Yeah.
blankie over them
Under
as
a rug.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And breastfeeding, as I said, playing with them. So having your cuddle time, but also having, you know, the play time. And as they get older, that can become more and more. And the play time is different, whether it's tummy time or whatever it is, and you're getting down face to face with them as they're doing their tummy time. Talking to them. So even though they can't talk, I would put my baby in the pram, and if we had nothing to do one afternoon, we'd go to the shops and I would talk to him constantly and say goodbye to the shop assistant, you know. And it's really important to talk because we're obviously learning all sorts of things, but we want to engage with them. Eye contact is really important. We want to ensure that they can see our faces, see our smiles, and learning from that developmental side of thing as well, and reading to them. You know, that's really important, as this is kind of, yes, it's emotional well-being, and it's developmental as well, but ensuring that they're connecting with you in a different way, and obviously that will then develop their vocab as vocabulary as a byproduct. Now, this is one of my passions for newborn mothers, breaks for mum. So I really had to look at this a different way when it was my experience. I didn't have any family help. Both my parents have passed away and my husband's in the same boat. So I had to reframe that having a break a little bit differently. So you don't have to get away from your baby necessarily to have a break. So I would put the baby in the pram for that third nap that he never did, and that was my break. So he's asleep. He doesn't need me. I can think what I need to think. I can regroup. I can put a podcast in, whatever it is, that is a break. Then I would often drive. So I might be driving to the osteopath or whatever I was doing on the other side of town. I'd put him in the car for maybe the first nap, and then we might be coming back for the third or whatever it was. I would put a podcast on. That for me was because that was something I chose to listen to, motivation or inspiring or whatever it was. That is a break.
And a break having to be focused on what the baby needs.
That's what I mean.
Because that's one of the challenges in that first trimester, that fourth trimester, is that the consistentness of a newborn. Like I had that experience myself, and it's like I had support, like I had a mum around, and you know, like and you know, but still it's just so consistent, isn't it?
And every scenario is different. You know, some people have their parents overseas, some people have their parents, you know, in a 2 hours away in the country. We do rely a lot on grandparents these days, and I guess that's why my situation was a little bit different. But every situation has different factors. You know, it's important to get a physical break, but it's important to reframe it as I'm getting a mental break as well. So some of the more physical breaks that you can create is, if you are breastfeeding, I know it can be a bit difficult and a bit taxing, but is to pump for milk. I was a demon at that. I would always pump, and I had it in the freezer. So if I felt like I needed a break or go for a walk just with the dog, I could do that. You can also do that so that, you know, I'm sure the maternal child nurse would have told this to your followers as well, is that then you're getting the husband or the partner to do that first feed of the night. If you've got frozen milk, and you can go to bed a bit earlier. Same with formula. Some people do that with formula for that reason, to give themselves a bit of a break. You want to be organised and prepared. So maybe you'll do, obviously I suggested in the in the pregnancy sleep, that you'll do a lot of preparation around food prior to having the baby. But you might also have one day you're feeling really energetic and you're cooking lots of meal and then freezing them, and then you know that you're sorted for the rest of the week or for a few days. And also give the responsibility to your partner. So often I hear that mothers don't want to give that responsibility over because they think that they're the only ones that can do it, or they do it better, or whatever it is. But we all give different things to our children and to our babies. Husbands give completely different things than women, and they need both. They need both parents.
I think it's awesome when you get dads involved as well, and because often, you know, dads don't know how to help, and you know, and particularly
that's so true.
And they want to.
That's so true.
Yeah, it is. When you talk to dads, it's a hard stage for them as well. It's a massive transition stage for the whole family, siblings and dads and all of those kind of things. So yeah, that's an awesome tip as well.
And also thinking about, these breaks are really important because we have to look at, obviously some women might have a history of depression or anxiety, but looking at this post-baby and post-birth and the recovery time and all those kind of things. So these breaks are really, for me, I saw them as self-preservation. And if you don't put them into your day or put them into your week, it will never happen. I find it, and I guess this is what I assume. If I think that my parents would have done this for me and said, hey, you need a break, but I didn't have that. So I had to do it for myself. And I think there'd be a lot of women in this kind of case too, for whatever reason. You need to create that for you. You need to put yourself first so that you're strong mentally and physically, so that you're there for your baby.
Yeah, absolutely. So prioritizing that time for yourself, because, you know, you have to look after yourself to be able to look after everyone else well.
Yes.
Yeah, so
absolutely.
that's important too.
And my last tip around newborns is around bedtime routine. So I mentioned that we don't put in a really strong routine when they're in that newborn phase, but these are foundations that we're putting into place, and we want to create what we call positive sleep associations. So negative sleep associations are things that they become quite dependent on. So some might say dummy, rocking, you know, I mean, there's definitely a place for rocking, particularly for newborns, but when they're a little bit older and it becomes the only way they'll go to sleep, that can be considered a negative sleep association. Now, positive sleep associations, these are positive sleep cues that trigger the baby, okay, I'm coming into sleep time, it's time to wind down. So a song, a lullaby, whether you're singing it or you're playing it in their bedroom, a book is a sleep cue, a bath. You don't have to bath your baby every night, and I don't recommend bathing it every night, but that's a great sleep cue. Or if they're a little bit older or you're feeling confident or whatever the situation is, you might shower them. A dark room is a sleep cue. Drawing the blinds, putting the blinds down, this is a sleep cue. Feeding is a sleep cue. White noise, my favorite, is a sleep cue. And even a little massage when they're really newborn might be a sleep cue. So putting all these things into place are great sleep cues, and it becomes a wind down routine for the baby. And then you're more likely to get a baby that will go to sleep and hopefully stay asleep.
I love that. That's so awesome. That's that, you know, and like you say, that's starting the practices early to really instill those good sleeping habits moving as the baby gets older as well. Because there's awesome to have routines, and they don't always work when they're really, really newborns.
No.
But just to start that positive sleep.
And you don't want to, like, you want to feed on demand. That's what we all recommend, is feeding on demand, really catering to the baby's needs. And biologically, they can't necessarily get themselves to sleep. They can't necessarily stay asleep. They need help. It's actually biologically not possible. But when they get to that 3-4 mark, when their sleep cycles start to link, and we often have to help them with that process and teach
3-4 months,
babies.
you mean? 3-4
Yeah,
months.
3-4. Sorry, what did I say?
You said
3-4 months.
But I knew what you meant, but just that. So that's when their sleep cycles are connecting, you said?
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly. So prior to that, we take it a bit easier, but there's a lot of foundations that we can put into place so that those cues and all that kind of thing are there. And then it makes it a little bit easier down the track when, because they talk about, 4-month regressions and all sorts of regressions and things like that. If we start to put these things into place earlier, then there might be a little bit less chance of that.
You've got some good solid tools that you can use then to make that transition easier into those next stages. That's so awesome. Thank you so much. I think they're amazing tips, and mums are going to get a lot out of that. And then if anyone is doing the whole program, then you're going to see Georgina again in the toddler module where we're going to talk about toddler sleep. So thank you so much. It's awesome.
Thanks, Emma.
All of your contact details are in there, so if people need more information, they will be able to get in contact with you.
Love to hear from you. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Thanks.